Welcome, wonderful peoples. Welcome to the TechMA tutorials. So, in our today's sessions, we are going to discuss about ECMA Script's new version ES6, and we got some new feature in that version that we are going to discuss about within 10 minutes. So, let's start it. So, first of all, what is ECMA Script? ECMA Script 2015, commonly known as ES6 or ES 2015, that is released on June 2015, but ES5 was released on December 2009. So it would then take almost 6 years for the next version of ECMA script to be released. So there are many existing new features available in ES6. So let's discuss about these features. So here you can see on my screen, I have top 10 best ES6 feature for a busy JavaScript developers. Not on a particular order as of now. So these are the 10 new features. First one is default parameter in ES6. Second one is template literals. Third is multi-line strings. Fourth is destructuring assignments in ES6. Fifth one is enhanced object literals. Sixth one is arrow functions. Seventh, promises. Eighth, block scoped let and const. That is really very useful feature. And nine one is class. That is really changed the writing style of JavaScript nowadays. And modules are the very important patterns nowadays in JavaScript architecture. So let's do some practicals. Okay, so the first thing is default parameters in ES6. So in ES6, we can put the default values right in the signature of the function. So how we can do this? In previous version of JavaScript, we declare our function like this and we pass our parameters height and width, but we are not able to set the default value here. So we'll have to increase the code and then we do like this. Okay, in the previous version of JavaScript, we have no way to declare, default parameters. Like we directly have to pass the parameters and then we can write our logic like this. If height is available, then take height, or otherwise take default value, which is 50. So the problem is we have to add two more lines with the code. But now with the ES6 new VA, we have resolved this problem. We got a default declaration of the parameter values. So now we can directly pass the default value of the variable. So if the value is available in height, then it will take that one. Otherwise, it will take the default value, which is 50, and same for the width. So this is the default parameter feature in ES6. Now let's move to the next feature, which is template literals in ES6. So the second feature is template literals. So in ES6, we can use a new syntax, which is this syntax. We can use this new syntax inside of the backtick of a string. So earlier in the old JavaScript, what we have to do is when we have a long string and we want to pass some dynamic values, so we'll have to follow this plus and these single commas and all these things. We have to follow this structure, and that is very hectic. Basically, we have to every time we'll have to add plus, then we'll have to start string, then we have to plus, then we have to start string. So this thing is a bit complicated. But in the new ES6 way, we have this backtick. This is not a normal string. So backtick is what? Backtick is simple. The key that is available just downside of escape key. So simply we can pass one. We can add one tick, and we can follow this template literal format. And in a single line, we can do all our stuff. So this is our template literals. So let's move to our third feature, which is multi-line strings in ES6. So let's see how we can implement. So third one, the multi-line string in ES6. It is a very cool feature of ECMAScript 6, because earlier, if you remember, we cannot write a string in multi-lines. If we want to write multiple lines in a string, so we'll have to do this kind of logic. We'll have to write. We have to break string into multiple lines, then add plus, then again add plus, add plus, add plus. Because in a single lines we cannot do that. Because if we do this in a single lines, so we will always start getting lint errors that the line length is very long. It is not a standard feature actually. So what we can do is, in the ES6 way, we just have to use simple this backtick. It's a template string that we have discussed earlier. So simple add template string and do whatever you want to do. It will print exactly the same in a multi-line. So that is a very cool feature of JavaScript. So now let's discuss about our fifth feature, which is enhanced object literals in ES6. Okay, so let's do it. So by using enhanced object literals in ES6, object literals makes it easy to quickly create objects with properties inside the curly braces. So let's see how we can do that. So basically earlier, if we have to return an object from a function or create a new object, so how we do that? We create an empty object. Inside that object we create some property and assign the values, create the property and assign the values. Although the both are things are same, but with the new help of new enhanced object literal feature, we can do by this way. We can reduce our code. What we are doing is we simply returning these properties inside the object. So by the name of this property, the object is gonna create the property name, the same name, and the value it is gonna assign to the property. So output will be the same exactly like this, but it reduces the code. So if you call this function, it will gonna always return you all these three properties. So this is how it can reduce our code, and we can increase the performance of our website if we use it in our code. So the arrow functions gives us a very cool feature. First of all, the syntax wise, it is very cool, and it reduces our code and effort. So first of all, if you will see, the syntax is a bit different and bit cooler than the normal function. So the normal functions are like this. uh, Here we have to write all this function name and parentheses we have to add. Instead that we have to do all this thing, then we are getting our result. But in ES6 way, if our statement is only one single line, like we are just returning one thing, so we can write it down in the one line also. So simple way you can see function name and parentheses, uh, and we don't have to write this braces of all this stuff in the single line. Whatever you're returning, you don't even have to write the return statement also. We simply can return and we will get the same result when we call this function. So these are basically arrow functions, but also these functions gives us some new features that is really helpful, like the fat arrow functions would make your this behave properly, because of this sometimes we stuck into a big problem that can help us. So the arrow functions are basically fat arrow functions. Unlike a regular function, an arrow function doesn't bind this. Instead, this is bound lexically. So what does it mean by lexically? That means arrow function always take the scope of its parent functions. So keep it as meaning the original context. So in this example, you can see that we have created this function, and in this function we have added this num is 0, and we have created a set interval that is gonna increase the number. But if we run this function, so we will get in result nan 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 every time when interval will work. So this is the problem that can resolved by the arrow function, because this problem is occurred because of this scope of the normal function, because every function is having its own this. So when we are trying to access this value, the number, the scope got changed. In the set interval, it is taking this function's scope, and here we don't have any this number assignment, so it is undefined by default. So when we are going to increase undefined plus plus, it will always going to return not a number. So that is the problem, and now this problem we can solve by using arrow function. So let's see how we can solve. So in this function you can see everything is same, but just we have changed the syntax of the function. We make the set interval by using arrow function. So previously you can see that we are using normal function, but here now we are using simple empty arrow function. It is basically anonymous function of arrow. So in this function what it is doing is it is taking its parent function scope. That means this number is equal to this number. Okay, so the thing is it is always gonna take 0 here, and 0 plus plus is 1 2 3, and it will go goes on. So this is how we solve this problem. Okay, promises are the new feature of ES6. So what are promises? Promises are basically that we used to handle asynchronous responses. Earlier in ES4, what we have, I mean ES5, what we have simply callback methods, and callback methods are always having some problems if you are aware about the callback handling situation. So JavaScript provided us this promises to resolve that problem. So in ES6 we can use promises with arrow functions. So here you can see that the example. So what we are trying to do is we have created a new promise that will return us a resolve or reject. So in our case it is returning resolve, and we will have to pass some values that we can access with the then method. So once this promise is got succeeds, and it will return the resolve with this value, and with the help of then method we can get this value and we can do whatever we want to do. Here we are simply consoling this result. But in ES5 earlier we don't have promises, so we'll have to use this set timeout things for asynchronous things, or we have to use callbacks. So as we know, the callbacks always have some problems like callback hell. If you are aware about this, if you are not aware about this, then I have created a separate tutorials on callback. I will add the link in the comment. You can go there and you can watch. So this is all about promises, and if you want to learn into deep about promises, so I will also create a new tutorial on promises separately, so you can watch it. And let's move to our new feature of ES6, which is a very important feature, and the name is block scope constructor, and which is let and scope. So let's continue on that. So first of all, what are block scoped variables? So in JavaScript, ES6 has introduced two new variables, which is let and const. So let is a new variable which allows to scope the variable to the blocks. So the main difference between let and variable is scoped to the nearest function block, and let is scoped to the nearest enclosing block, which can be smaller than a function block. And another thing is variable always got hoist, but the let and const never hoist. So if you want to learn more about what is hosting, I have created a separate tutorial on that, and I will have added the link. You can go there and you can watch what is hosting in JavaScript. So for short, hosting is something whenever JavaScript compiler runs, it always hosts the functions and variable on the top of the function scope. In JavaScript, we have two types of scope. One is global scope and second one is function scope. Okay, so in this example, you can see that we have variable amount in this function, which is 0. And inside this condition, we have created another variable, which is equal to 1. That means this amount is gonna hoist on the top, the global scope. And first, it is gonna take the value 0. Once this condition is goes true, it will gonna update the same variable with the 1. So now we have written two variables differently, but at the top, at the time of hosting, it will gonna merge into one, and it is gonna update this value from 0 to 1. So at the end, when we return this amount by this function, it will gonna always return output 1. But this is for variable, the normal variable that JavaScript have. But in the case of let, if you will see, we have two lets here, similar as variable, okay? But this let scope is only inside this function, and after that we have created another if condition. In the inside if condition we have created another amount variable with the let, and we have updated the value, but the scope of this let only this if condition, and it doesn't hoist, so it is not going to update the value of this amount. So it will always going to return you 0 because it is not going inside, and it has created its own separate block scope. So we have two amount having different properties values. So simply we are returning this amount, and it is pointing to this amount only, not this amount, because it is not updating the value of 0 because of block scope. It is all about let and const. Let's move to our next feature. Okay, so now we are going to discuss about the ninth feature of ES6 of our tutorial, which is classes. Classes are the very important feature of ES6, It is nothing, just a constructor function, and they just added a synthetical sugar on the constructor function, and renamed it as a class. So now we can see with our code examples how we can do this. So here we can see this code as written in ES5 the old way. So in this construction function, what we are doing is we simple created a construction function. Inside that we have created some properties and a function, and after that we created an object via new keyword and pass some values and the help of this object, and we can directly call this function. So simply we just created a constructor function, and after that we created a new object of this constructor and we are using it. But now in ES6, how we can do this same code like this? Instead of using constructor function name, we use class name, and the syntax is like simple object. We don't use this parenthesis here. So according to the rule, I mean the syntax, every class have a constructor method. So constructor method is gonna receive two properties, and this is gonna take default properties empty. If nothing is there, then empty string that we just have discussed earlier in this session. And after that we just simply, the code is same. This is the syntax of written function inside the class. We don't have to use the function keyword and everything. We simply write the function name and parentheses and start code. And after that all the process is same, but only the class thing is function constructor has been replaced by the class name. So that's all for classes, nothing new. Or if you want to learn in detail about classes, so I have a separate tutorial for the same also. I have added the link into the description, so you can go from there and you can watch the complete class tutorial in detail, so you will better get to know what are classes. Okay, so that's all for classes in this session, and now let's discuss about the last 10th feature of ES6 of this tutorial. Alright, okay, so in this section we are going to discuss about the modules that are the 10th feature of our class. That is the most important topic of ES6, and the module is something, it's kind of architecture basically. The main use of this architecture, we can reduce the duplicacy of the code. We create a particular module and we can use it multiple times. So that is the main concept of creating modules. So now modules main features are like we can create a module, then we export this, and that we can import in other files, and directly we can use the same code of the module into the other files. So in that means we are saving our code, we are not doing duplicacy. So this is how we can use in the practically. So here you can see that I have this folder which is a node folder, and this folder is alright. So in this folder, if you download this folder, you will see the resources. Inside the resources, you will see the node folder. You just have to uh, open this folder into your IDE. After that, you have to open CMD and terminal of this folder, and directly you should have installed these packages. So after once you're done with the installation, you will get all this module inside the node module section. That is the requirement of the application. And make sure you have installed Babel. Okay, for some users you will see that this thing is hidden because of your settings of the system. So make sure you have installed Babel also. And in this file, I have index.js and calc.js. So what I have done is I have created a simple calculator that is going to calculate two values, and it is going to return the result. And after that, I have just exported this calculator method. Okay, that means it can be accessible inside all the application if I exported something. And now what we are doing is in the index.js, I just simply import this, and I have used this calc method and assigned to a number, and I'm simply printing this number inside this. Okay, so this is how I'm using. So I just want to use this number value here, but I have created it at a common place and exported this, so I can use it anywhere in the application. So this is how module works. I have created a module, exported it by import. I can import it to any file, and after that I'm directly using these values wherever I want to use. So basically it reduces the code size, and it can helpfully use anywhere when we are going to use a big application and where we want to save our code and all things, and it will be very helpful, and it gives the code a better structure. So that's all for today. In this session we have discussed about these 10 modules. So if you have any question on that, for anything, you can write down on the comment section, and I will definitely gonna get back to you with your solution. And for now, thanks for watching, and please do subscribe the channel and like the video if you like, and comment your valuable feedback. And thanks for the watching. Have a nice day.